It wasn't a fear of getting it right or wrong. It was I had nerves because I cared so deeply about the women and the people that go through this every day. And I wanted to make sure I did their story justice. I wanted it to be truthful. And that's what drives all of this. And so at the end of the day, it was because I cared.
Right.
Hi, besties. Welcome back to my channel. Last week, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. And I say this because Blake and Ryan are doing everything together. And even though Ryan is not named as a plaintiff or a defendant anymore, his name was still on the subpoena that I got from Google, which I thought was wild. So when I say that Blake and Ryan had a bad week, I would say it was Blake and Ryan that had a bad week, though it would appear that Ryan is using his wife as a shield to fight his battles for him and trying to deflect all of the bad press onto her. I mean, if you were married to a man like that, who needs an enemy? Either way, Blake Lively had a mountain of bad press because she decided that she was going to take on the internet, and she got tons of backlash. I mean, the mainstream media couldn't even ignore it because what she was doing was akin to what a lot of other, celebrities and political people, and I'm not talking about Trump specifically. I'm just saying that there's been a lot of discussion in the last couple years about this attack on the freedom of the press and the freedom of speech. And if it's something that we care about, it should be something that we protect. And when she was seen going after online creators that are simply online and journalists, independent journalists online reporting using their voices and their protections under the law, it was too hard for many outlets to ignore. Well, amid that backlash and knowing full well, in my opinion, that a judge would never allow this to happen, and knowing that the mountain of motions to quash that were being filed were going to come back and she was going to get scolded. And Ezra Hudson facing threats that she was going to be reported to the bar, possible sanctions, Blake facing possible sanctions, protective orders, and demands to the judge that he no longer allow her, Blake, to file any subpoenas without court ordered approval. That's right. Content creators were the first ones to step up to tell the court, listen, what she's doing here is wrong. And suddenly, Blake decided that she was going to withdraw several of these subpoenas. And it's weird because on Thursday, I made a comment that I would be filing a joint motion to quash with Shasti and Janessa. And our attorneys were working together to not only have us all sign declarations to the extent that we are not involved in this case, we're just independent people that are journalists that are covering this. Suddenly on Friday, she meets with some of these lawyers and she's like, okay, I'm going to withdraw Shasti's. I'm going to withdraw Janessa's. She decides she's going to withdraw a court of random opinion, which is Lauren, and she's going to withdraw Kenza's along with Ashley. And she sends this letter to the court, which is ridiculous, trying to justify the use of the subpoena. And in that, on Friday, I wasn't offered that she withdraw mine. Instead, my attorney had to talk with them in emergencies on Saturday to get them to consider it. And then they finally withdrew mine on Saturday. But trust me, they're not over because they want more information from me. And I want to just share part of the letter that they wrote to the judge, and I feel like they're only doing this because they're trying to defend this overbroad, abusive, and completely inappropriate subpoena. She sent this to the judge on Saturday. Based on third-party representations made in meet and confers, public statements, and/or information provided in the moving papers, there's no further information required from the subpoenas as to these specific third parties at this time, as Lively has therefore withdrawn the subpoenas as to them accordingly. So it's Lauren, Ashley, Mackenzie, and Cassidy, along with Leanne Newton, all of the people that had filed on the docket. And then they also privately withdrew Shasty's. As the court knows, a core component of Miss Lively's claims center on the Wayfair defendant's digital media smear campaign, which sought to manipulate the media landscape against her using untraceable sources to paint Miss Lively as the aggressor instead of the victim. She's not going after anonymous sources. She's not going after anonymous people. Every single person that spoke was visible or on a channel and using their own voice. The reason why people call Blake an aggressor is because she is an aggressor. The Wayfair defendants have recently taken to mocking the reference to an untraceable digital campaign, claiming that such a notion defies common sense. But as they're well aware, Melissa Nathan discussing the blueprint states all of this will be most importantly untraceable. Untraceable in that what? All they did was defend themselves during August, and no digital campaign even occurred. And furthermore, nothing online is untraceable. And if I were a client of any publicist that told me they could run any sort of untraceable campaign, I would fire them because there's no such thing as not traceable on the internet. There's a digital footprint for everyone. Either way, no untraceable campaign occurred, and Blake Lively knows exactly who she's going after because she chose to go after all of us. Miss Lively's subpoenas were one part of the discovery process aimed at gathering information to link the Wayfair party's activities to sources through YouTube and X content creators. Her counsel has met and conferred with various individuals whose account information is the subject of the subpoenas, including the third parties who have filed motions to quash. Ms. Lively's counsel has advised Google and X that the subpoenas are withdrawn as to each of the following, which again names the same people. And they've provided each of the third parties a copy of such withdrawal, with the exception of Cassidy O'Connell, who moved under a pseudonym and has not provided a service email or other contact information. While almost all of the third parties request to quash the subpoenas on behalf of not only themselves, but also other and individuals in the subpoenas, these third parties lack standing to do so. Accordingly, the court should deny the motions in their entirety, and including to the extent that they seek relief beyond the individual movement. Okay, so what I can tell you is that she never really met and conferred with Lauren, but I guess apparently her public statements and in her motions prove that, she's not involved. And she's not telling us that she's not going to then go ahead and file individual subpoenas against us. And for me specifically, they wanted to know if I had any anonymous sources reach out to me and inform my reporting, if I worked with any anonymous sources. Anonymous meaning the source doesn't identify who they are. Anonymous meaning untraceable source. It's a misnomer. It's ridiculous. It can happen, but it didn't happen here. In fact, everyone I spoke to had a name, was verified, and was not anyone that worked for Wayfair or any of the parties in this lawsuit. And furthermore, sources that are confidential and not named are not anonymous. They are simply people that are protecting their identity from the public because of retaliation and the fear of retaliation. And knowing that if they are to say something in this case and put their name on the record, they could also face retaliation from Blake. They could get blacklisted by WME. They could get blacklisted by Sony. They've already seen what has happened to Wayfair, and now they're fearful of being on record. Some of them have gone on record, but many have not because of that retaliation. But there is no such thing in my reporting as an anonymous source. So under this pretense, the delusions of her are that some random sock account is contacting me, not identifying who they are, I'm then taking them at their word, which defies logic when it comes to reporting. You need to verify who you're speaking to and verify their information before you report it. And I'm just taking at the word of an anonymous sock account or an anonymous emailer or an anonymous tip, and that somehow is going to somehow link back to Wayfair. If it's anonymous, how would you link them back to Wayfair even if it were true? You can't. But it didn't happen. And what I think is deplorable here is that Blake Lively, when Justin sued the New York Times, Blake Lively used litigation privilege. She said that she was protected under litigation privilege and she was also protected under the New York Shield Law. She said she had protections under the New York Shield Law. And the New York Times never had to disclose to anyone, to the court, that Blake was their source. Of course, Blake was their source. It's obvious Blake was the source, but they never had to disclose it to the court. But she didn't want to give up the fact that she spoke to the New York Times. She didn't want to give up the fact that her publicist, Leslie Sloan, spoke to numerous outlets, and her publicist continues to run a smear campaign against Justin with the fabricated claims of this untraceable smear campaign, defying all common sense and all logic that this untraceable campaign could occur after a lawsuit had occurred. It would be unconscionable and highly unethical and downright illegal for a defendant in a case to try to intimidate the plaintiff and continue a illegal quote unquote smear campaign against them. What she seemingly fails to understand is that in the world of the media, people get to speak to the press and they get to be confidential if there is a risk to their safety. And knowing full well that Miss Lively has gone to lengths to dox the full addresses and phone numbers of individuals that are not parties to this case by filing their service affidavits from service processors. She knew for months that this protective order was in place to not dox addresses. She demanded that all of it be sealed because she was worried that her address was going to become public, but she had no fear or concern about the innocent third parties that were not involved in this case, that have nothing to do merely other than the fact that she is delusional and thinks they're part of it and taking her down. She goes and doxes their addresses. A docket that is viewed by thousands of people, maybe millions, a docket that is widely reported on, and she is publishing their addresses. Who's the one that's really dangerous here? Wayfair has not published anyone's address. Wayfair has not put any source or third party in danger. They have not disclosed anyone's confidential health records. But, Blake has. She doxed that Mr. Jed Wallace faced a life-threatening health crisis due to what was going on in this lawsuit with no regard for his safety or his well-being, but she won't give up her own medical records. Blake Lively won't give up her financial records to prove damages, but then she wants the financial records of the quote-unquote untraceable smear campaign. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. It's all just abusive, threatening, intimidation, and harassment under the guise of a frivolous lawsuit. And what they're not doing is just withdrawing the subpoenas altogether. Instead, they're going one by one to the court to withdraw individual people, but they're not withdrawing the totality of these subpoenas, which means if someone doesn't have an attorney, can't afford one, or doesn't understand the legal process and know that they can contact Ezra directly and fight this, it means there are creators still at risk right now of having their bank records handed over to Blake Lively, or their bank account records and their credit card numbers and their IP addresses and their addresses, knowing full well that Miss Lively could then go ahead and dox them or threaten them or try to sue them or file some other litigation against them. She's only going against the people that have humiliated her in court, and they're trying to get ahead of what would be a smackdown and a verbal lashing from the judge. Additionally, they don't want to hear from the judge that what they're doing is illegal. So they're just going to withdraw it and pretend like nothing happened, even though multiple people have asked the judge for sanctions against her, protective orders, and seeking legal fees for what she's done. Nope, just withdraw them. I'm sorry, just kidding. Or the calls that Ezra Hudson is going to be reported to the bar. Nope, just sorry. We are going to withdraw that against Cassidy because we don't want to get reported to the bar. It doesn't change what they did. It's just a backtrack. They're running scared. They're doing PR damage control. If they really knew and believed in the validity of these subpoenas, they would not have just simply withdrawn them based upon public statements. If the attorneys would have done their own due diligence and say contacted people directly and said, "Can you tell me if X, Y, and Z happened?" before going to a court and issuing a subpoena, which can actually, if you don't respond to a subpoena, place you in contempt of court, which means fines and possible jail time. And then she used an end around and went to Google instead of directly to the content creators in the hopes that none of us would actually get contacted. And then after withdrawing them, not making clear that she won't further subpoena us as third party witnesses and try to seek documents directly from us, because she still wants to know my anonymous sources, not respecting my journalistic privilege, the New York Shield laws, and the fact that under the US Constitution, sources are protected from retaliation and have a right to speak without fear of being uncovered. And the fact that she still thinks, after all of this, that people formed their opinion by something Wayfair did is ridiculous. Her own actions are what is putting her in this position. So for present, some people's are being withdrawn. Mine was withdrawn on Saturday, but I've been given no assurances from them that they won't subpoena me individually. I've been given no assurances that they won't try to sue me. Nothing. Just, we're withdrawing. But can you please tell us your anonymous sources? I don't have any anonymous sources, Blake, and none of them were. And I have confidential sources, and none of them are tied to Wayfair. None of them. None of them are the attorneys or the publicists or the defendants. None of them. And even if, on the chance that I ever spoke to any of them, it's not against the law for Wayfair to defend themselves in the public when you are constantly slandering them on a day-to-day basis. Blake Lively will not recover from this PR backlash. She is going to be lucky if she gets out of this from the judge without a serious scolding and possible sanctions. And Ezra doesn't get to erase what she did. She very well could end up with complaints filed against her with the bar. And there are plenty of us that have grounds to do so. All right, that's it for right now. I'm sure there'll be more to come today. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.